Hello and welcome to Real Life Matters with Sandra. Today I'm going to be talking to a couple, Simon and Trudy Fielding, about square dancing. If you're new to my channel, please press the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any podcasts when I upload the videos. And I would encourage you to sit back, take a cup of coffee, tea, water, whatever you like, and just enjoy this podcast. Hello and good morning to both of you, Simon and Trudy. Can I just ask you to introduce yourselves, please?
Certainly. I'm Simon Fielding, and I'm the current president of the Square Dance Callers Club of Great Britain.
And I'm Trudy Fielding, Simon's wife, and I'm the vice president of that organisation as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I've got two important people in front of me. Very, very good. So what is square dancing?
Yeah, very good question. A lot of people have no idea. They think it might be line dancing or folk dancing or barn dancing, and it's not actually any of those. You learn moves, but they're not put in a set choreographic pattern. You have someone standing up the front who's calling out the moves, they're known as the caller, and they can put them in almost any order they like. So you start in a square of 8 people, and you have to listen to the caller and work as a team to achieve the dance. So some people have described it as civilized barn dancing, but it is rather different because with barn dancing, you have a set dance that you learn as a routine. That doesn't happen in square dancing, but it's lots of fun. You meet lots of people.
Absolutely. And square dancing, wherever you go in the world, be it in Europe or into Asia, is always called in English.
Yes.
Many danced overseas, the only English words they understand are the square dance commands. It's quite interesting having called
isn't it?
To people whose English is not their mother tongue. Quite interesting. But it means it's a universal dance form. You can go anywhere in the world and dance.
So even places like Japan, Taiwan, there's a strong square dance movement over there.
Yeah.
And it's all called in English.
Oh, wonderful. That is so, I never thought that could be the case. I thought, especially when you take it across the world, people have their own languages and things. To think that the language itself, as well as the ways that the dance moves are done, are called, are maintained. So it's more like a potable exercise, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So what has square dancing got to do with both of you?
Well, we got into square dancing through a friend of my mother's, and that was in 1993.
Yeah.
And within a couple of years, we thought, we'd like to have a go at calling. So we've actually been callers for 27 years now, and we currently call for 4 clubs. And we've won various awards, and we call nationally. We're known in this country amongst the square dance movement. We've called internationally as well, and we've called at conventions, festivals, campouts. We've coached at some caller schools as well, where we've been some of the coaching staff there. So we regularly train people. We're mentors for people. We've organised various big events, weekend events, school events, including the 60th celebrations, which were, that was for about,
500-600 dancers we had for that.
Yes.
And that was in Banbury, in Oxfordshire.
And that was international dancers coming all across as well. So, and as we said right at the beginning, we're president and vice president of the Square Dance Callers Club of Great Britain. Now, that is one of the organisations in this country that looks after square dancing. So we look after the callers and the cuers, and there's another organisation that looks after the clubs. But in our time, we've also been the joint chair of GSI, which is Grand Square International, and we were actually the coaching staff there as well. So 2014, we ran an international festival and school as well. So yes, square dancing plays a large part in our lives.
And I suppose it all goes back. We were invited one night to a taster night by a friend who said, "Oh, come along and try this." We had no idea that it was about to literally change our lives forever. I had no idea that first night what would happen sort of a few years down the line. So it was a real turning point, I guess, in our life.
So would you say thank you to your friend who invited you for this taster?
Oh,
yes.
We've given a tribute to him as well. It's amazing sometimes the little connections, how they used, and the forks in the road, and where one decision changes the direction you're going and the impact that it has.
Yeah, I mean, the very first taster night we went to as a dancer, there was supposed to be 6 of us going. And 4 of the party pulled out. We just left Trudy and myself, and we felt we couldn't let this friend down. So we just kind of thought, well, we better go. And there you go. Life changes forever.
So much fun.
Absolutely. We have made so many friends in this country, in Europe, and further afield.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So what other skills have you learned from being square dance callers? And also in that question, I would like you to actually describe what a caller is, because some people might not know what that means. Is it someone that just shouts down from the rooftop to everybody and go, "You move"? Or what is it?
And it's very rough and small, probably that's what it is. But
but what we can do, we've sent you some clips, and that might give the people that are watching and listening an idea of a little bit of what some square dancing is like. So usually with square dancing, you have 2 sections in what is known as a tip. So the dancers, usually a tip is about 15 minutes. The first part is like a workshop where you're putting them through their paces, you're explaining moves, you're stretching their abilities, teaching them. And then the second part is a singing call, which is a song that we sing with funny words, which are the moves, so that they actually dance it. So moves have got all sorts of weird names, like flutter wheel, recycle. But on the other hand, some of the moves are quite descriptive and will actually help the dancers to remember what they're supposed to be doing, like pass to the center. So those moves, we call out the move, the name of the move, sometimes with a few helpful words. Sometimes they don't need those helpful words. And the dancers, once they've learnt those moves, know instantly what they are required to do, and then have to move in time to the music to make those different patterns and flowing body flow with good hand usage. So it is quite a complicated thing for the caller to work out what they can do, what's viable to do, what is helpful to do, what will feel good for the dancers to make it a proper dance.
Square dancing is broken down into a series of programs. With basic, mainstream, plus, advanced, and challenge. And I suppose that the easiest sort of comparison would be to think about it in terms of academia. Key stage 1, 2, 3, 4, O level, A level, degree, and so forth. And the further you got the stack, the more moves you have to play with. So a dancer dancing the challenge program, which is the top program. As a caller, you would probably have at any one time options of
about 400 or
500 moves you could call on to work with.
Whereas down at the mainstream program, which is what most people learn first, you'd have about 67 different moves to learn. But in terms of, because you have to listen to the music, feel the beat of the music, it's not just the calling that we've learned. You asked about other skills. We've actually, silly things like how to use a microphone, how to speak in public, being able to stand up in front of people and talk and explain something. And if they don't get it one way, you've got to learn how to explain it another way. So you start to learn how to express yourself, how to teach people. And because you are seen on stage with a microphone and you are the one who's in command of the dance, you're often seen as a leader. So you have to develop leadership skills as well. So there's an awful lot of things where we've had to build up confidence with public speaking. We've had to learn about microphone usage, what you do and don't do. Singing in public is something we've had to become very confident at doing. So it's broadened our horizons in a number of ways. And I'm not just talking geographically, I'm also talking with our relationships with people, learning how to speak to people. It's really opened a whole different world to us. So yeah, it's benefited us in a number of ways, but also with dancing, there's a number of health benefits because it's all done at a brisk walk. So there's no leaping about where you're likely to twist an ankle. It's a brisk walk, which is very healthy, not just for getting your circulation going, for breathing deeply, but it's also good for your weight-bearing bones. And because of the interaction as a team, it's good socially and emotionally and mentally. So actually square dancing is quite good health-wise all round.
Yeah, and of course there are mental stimulation benefits too, both for us as the callers and for the dancers. You know, as people often say, the dancers often say, when we're down dancing, we're not thinking about next week's shopping list or what's happened at work today or whatever. You haven't got some. So I suppose the way it's almost a form of escapism, but both physical and mental escapism, I think.
That's very, very interesting. And you've both seen me take part in square dancing before several times. So, and Simon, you spoke about key stages. What key stage do you think I would be if you were marking my step?
This is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, that's putting you on the spot there. I'll give myself key stage 0.
If you think about, we talked about the program, talked about basic, mainstream. Underneath that, you have something called hoedown level, which is like a taster, which is something your good self have experienced. So therefore, I suppose, given the analogy I used, you'd probably be key stage 1, but don't read too much into that response. That's only because if you joined the class and went through the programs, I'm sure you'd be O level.
So basically, there's room for improvement.
Yes, there's always room for improvement.
Doesn't matter how long you've been dancing, how long you've been calling, there's always room for improvement. There's always something to learn.
It's interesting when you coach new callers, as we do, and you see them taking their first tentative steps. And part of the time you've done public speaking, you appreciate this. To get up on the stage, first of all, that's scary. Then have a microphone in your hand, that's another level of scariness. And then to think, I've got to move these people about and do something, that's another stage again.
Because they won't move until you give them a call, a command to do. So they are dependent on every word coming out of your mouth, which is quite a responsibility, also quite intimidating.
So you might have newer callers come out and you work with them. It doesn't. I get ideas all the time from watching new callers do stuff because they think differently to what you do. Many times I've taken my ideas that newer callers have had and thought, I'm going to work with that. What you never do, you don't pinch ideas per se, but you take the ideas and you work and develop.
You get the idea.
You get the idea, and of course, then with you get greater experience, you can make other things happen. So, you're never too old, never too experienced to learn new stuff.
That's good. That's refreshing to hear. So we all know that the last almost 2 years has been one of a horrendous time for many people, millions of people across the world. So what has been the impact of COVID on square dancing and on you in particular?
Well, of course, when we had lockdown 1 back in March 2020, square dancing like a number of other sort of dancing and dancing activities and many activities, stopped overnight. And really, you know, for the best part of 18 months, square dancing is a contact sport, as you obviously realise.
Because you're actually touching people, you're exercising, so you're breathing more deeply, and you're actually touching hands to close contact. So that just was stopped. Everything was cancelled. So all the club nights that we usually called, because we were calling 3-4 nights a week, all our Saturday bookings all over the country, everything was cancelled. So it was, for us, in many ways, it was lovely to have a bit of a break. But after, as time went on, you were aware that people were really starting to struggle mentally. And where square dancing had been a huge support because they were interacting with other people, they were seeing their friends, it was good exercise, you could tell that there was this real pressure on them and they were starting to feel down. So certain clubs started up Zoom meetings regularly for their members. Some sent out newsletters just to keep in contact with people. And there was this whole desire, when's it going to restart? When's it going to restart? So square dancing, like a lot of clubs, just ceased to be. And while first it was different, they went out, people kind of read or rested or whatever, and we made them use of that time. After a while, people really started to miss the health benefits that it had been giving them. So once the government restrictions lifted enough that we were allowed to start dancing again, people were dying to come back, but obviously everyone is at a different stage on their journey in relation to COVID. Some are very hesitant, and you have to respect that. Others are thinking, right, I've been jabbed up to the hilt, I want to get on and live my life. And again, there's all shades of grey in between. So for those that have wanted to come back, a lot of clubs have restarted now, and we're calling now, and people just want to get out and dance again and have been so appreciative that they can do that. But in the time that the clubs have been shut, people mentally have slowed down, physically down, and so we're having to start, should we say, a lot further back than where they were when just before we closed down. One other thing I would mention, we're retired from the usual 9-to-5 day jobs. So square dancing calling pays a large part of the bills. Financially, all of a sudden, that stopped. But God has been very good in the way he's provided and the way he's just protected us and kept an eye on us. And it's to go from calling 3 to 5 nights a week to having a rest, we really appreciated. It meant that we could also do a number of jobs around the house that have been outstanding, starting to get the garden sorted, which we needed to do. So we were able to use that time. Having said that, because we are leaders in various organisations, we were required to draft various guidelines as to what you could or couldn't do. So gradually, as the restrictions started to ease, obviously clubs and callers were coming to us saying, well, when can we start? When can we start? So we had to spend a lot of time as a committee and as a council reading through the government guidelines, working out what applied to us and making sure that all our members were aware of that. So whilst at first it was a lovely break and it gave us time to reflect and view, well, what are our priorities? What do we want to do when we start getting back to calling? It was also quite busy in looking at other things like the guidelines.
Well, as you appreciate, there's a lot of guidelines that were published during the course of those 18 months. And we have a sister activity known as round dancing, which is more of just a couple activity. Now, they could start before square dancing could, because they could do it socially distanced. Well, you can't do square dancing socially distanced, which was again, so the rounds, our colleagues at Round started just a bit earlier. Most square dance clubs started last autumn, back in September. And as Trudy said, you know, numbers a little bit patchy, people on their journey with COVID. But I'm pleased to say that from a lot of clubs, they're getting back to where they were sort of pre-pandemic. Other clubs less so, and actually it's geographically quite patchy. Certain areas of the country are further ahead than others, but that's how it is at the moment. You just have to run with that and try and take everybody along at the same sort of and respect the fact that, you know, some people are on a different speed and different journey.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think, you know, many clubs up and down the country and even up and down the world would have been in the situation that you guys were in as well, and having to cope with all of the, you know, ups and downs of, you know, restrictions on, restrictions off, and all of that, and of course the confidence that people had, different degrees of that, as you mentioned, Trudy, and you just have to go with it and respect it. And you know, we're just hopeful that all of this will be lifted in terms of the virus itself would just disappear in very near future. So thank you for sharing that with us.
One or two clubs, of course, in on up to Christmas, did just pause their meetings. Obviously, family Christmas. I mean, a lot of families missed out the previous year. So the one or two clubs said, okay, we'll just take a couple of weeks pause pre-Christmas. And I understand that. That's very sensible. But they do seem to come back in the new year now with Omicron, you know, appearing to ease back. The confidence, I think, is starting to return. So I'm cautiously optimistic that, you know, we're going to keep moving forward, not sort of have too many more bumps in the road.
Yeah, I share that optimism for various reasons and at every level, really, to be honest, because we've all missed, you know, the contact, the social contact. I think pre-COVID, everybody thought they were kind of like self-sufficient, you know, they can live by themselves, don't have to see your neighbors and everything. And suddenly COVID hit and we were missing people, you know, missing the contacts, the chit chat, the fights, even in some cases. The disagreements. It was like, bring that all back, please. You know, so
this is. I mean, we are inherently social animals, and you know, we miss that. And you know, okay, Zoom's a wonderful thing. We're having a Zoom meeting this morning. Zoom is better than a phone call. It's an upgrade on a phone call, but face to face is an upgrade on Zoom. That's how I tend to look at it. You know, and now people are getting back together again. And it's not always about the dancing. You come into the dance hall some evenings and there's a buzz, there's chit chat happening. And you think, yeah, we missed that. And perhaps we didn't realise the value of it pre-COVID. And if COVID's done anything, I think it's highlighted that, you know, the need for social interaction, social contact with each other.
Absolutely. So, as Christians, or should I say even more so as Baptists, you know, what has God taught you? What has God taught you, and how has God used you through square dancing?
Well, dancers know we are Christians. We've not kept it a secret. They know what we stand for. And there are times when we've said, or we'll pray about certain situations that they have mentioned to us. And we've actually had some of our friends say, who they've been quite amazed from the point of view, but you're normal people. We take that as a huge compliment.
Exactly.
Because, well, what did they expect a Christian to be? So, but it's very much, therefore, a witness from the point of view that they know what we stand for, what we believe, and therefore they are scrutinizing our lives. So we do have to make sure that ethically we're doing the right things, that we are fair in our assessments and judgments. But yes, it is a witness from that point of view. But we also, calling is a lovely illustration of how God often deals with us. And we've been able to share this with certain groups that have asked us to give a short talk on square dancing or something. And we've been able to share this illustration because in square dance calling, when you're dancing as a group of 8 people, you need to listen for the caller's instructions. But not only that, you need to listen, you need to actually obey them, and obey them promptly. And isn't that a wonderful illustration with God? When we have to listen for what God is telling us He wants us to do in our lives. And then when we hear that, we need to actually obey it, and we need to do it promptly. Now in square dancing, if you don't, the whole thing breaks down and you get in a mess. But isn't that also what happens in our lives? If we don't heed what God is telling us because He knows best, if we don't heed it, don't obey it, and don't do it promptly, usually things end up in a mess. So there's also the aspect that in square dancing, you've got to work with others. You need to consider others. Those that are weaker or less experienced, you need to support them. And so again, that is something that, as a Christian within the church, we need to be doing with our brothers and sisters. And then one final thing is that in square dancing, the caller knows what's coming next. The dancers don't. The caller knows what they're intending to achieve, what pattern they're going to be making. The dancers don't. So the dancers have to trust that the caller knows what they're doing and will sort it out. Even if they don't understand what's going on, even if they think, well, why have they put me in this position? I can't see how it's going to work from here. But again, this is where we have to trust God, because often there are things that happen in our lives and we think, God, I don't understand what you're doing, but you've told me to do this, so I'll do it. And that is where trusting God takes over, even when we can't see the way ahead, even when we don't understand what He's doing. And this is where faith comes into it. So square dancing and calling has got that lovely illustration that we've been able to use in quite a lot of detail to explain to people. And there's been certain people who said, I get it now. I see what you're trying to say. So we've also, we have some square dance friends who are Christians. And it's been lovely to be able to share with them and also support them, because when they go through tough times, they've got loads of friends, but not many of them are Christians. So they've been able to come to us and say, I know you'll understand if I tell you this, this, and this. And we understand from a square dancing point of view, we understand from a human friend point of view, but we also understand spiritually what they're going through as well. So yes, although square dancing plays a big part in our lives, God has actually been able to use that for us, through us, teach us things. And yeah, he's very present in it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very obvious to us that God's hand being in a lot of things regarding square dancing at various times. I mean, even going back to how we got into it, and the very first hoedown we went to when our 4 people couldn't go and we went. It could have ended there. We might have thought, oh yes, this is not for us, thank you very much. But it didn't. And we then went on to learn to dance properly. And then when we became thinking about calling, it truly was wanted to be the call. I never did.
Well, again, it was how God organised events. We had some square dance friends, and he had a 50th birthday. He wanted a square dance for it. And the callers at one of the clubs that we danced for, Alan and Irene, were going to call the dance. And there was going to be a break in the middle for a fish and chip supper. Now, this friend, David, knew that Simon played keyboards and piano, and he knew that I used to sing quite a bit. And he used to play guitar. So he said, why don't we get together and do some songs and skits kind of while the fish and chip break is on to keep people entertained. So we practiced for this, and then come the evening, we did some songs. And one of the songs that I sang that Simon played and David played was Don't It Make Your Brown Eyes Blue?
Crystal Grams.
And afterwards, the callers, Alan and Irene, came up to me and said, we've got that as a square dance record. You know, at our club, we have once a quarter, we have an open mic night where anyone can have a go at calling. If we lend you the record, you can learn it as a funny song with funny words and do it at the next open mic night. So sure enough, I thought, okay, why not? I'll give it a go. So I learned the song that I had I knew the proper words to it, but I learnt it with the moves instead. Did it at the next open mic night, and it went down a storm. Well, there were 2 or 3 other clubs that also used to have open mic nights, so I did it 2 or 3 times at other clubs as well. And by the time I'd done it about the 5th or 6th time, I noticed that the dancers also knew the funny words, and they didn't need me. And I thought, right, I'm going to write a different set of moves to it. So I looked up in the book how long each move took, how many beats of music, worked it all out. Does it work? Yes, it does. Sorted it all out. And I thought, right, next time I do it at an open mic night, I will be able to use a different figure so that they will have to listen to what I'm singing. So next night came, I did it, and I crashed the floor. And I was so upset. I didn't know why. Basically, I allowed for execution time for hand usage, body flow, all those sorts of things, which I knew nothing about. Shortly after, about 2 months after, we saw in the national magazine that there was going to be a school for people that wanted to learn to call. And I thought, well, I'd like to go along just to find out what I did wrong as to why it didn't work. So that was my reasoning for going along. But we knew one of the coaches there. And so we went to him on a club night and said, we're thinking of joining this school, and explained the situation.
You're thinking about joining the school.
I'm thinking about joining the school.
Well, yeah, let's clarify that now. He's an expert, you weren't.
That's fine. So then he turned around to me and he said, and what about you? And I said to him, don't look at me. I'm done with the big shit, the one who wants to be the caller. He said, well, that's fine. He said, but just have a little think about if you get to this school and go as truly a sort of dancing partner and you think, oh, I wish I could have had a go, will you feel you're missing out? And I thought, I don't want to be a caller. But I came home and this sort of thing kept nagging at the back of my brain, well, why don't you ever go? And I had this argument with myself about, yes, I do, no, I don't. To cut a long story short, I signed up to go as a caller.
One of the requirements for attending the school was that you had to have done at least one singing call. Well, I had several times, he hadn't. So about 3 days before the school started, a club had an open mic night and he did his one singing call at that. Yeah. So he was as green as could be to go to the school.
And at that stage, I couldn't carry a tune in the bucket. You know, it was that bad.
Oh,
but so straight away at that point, I was stopped being nudged.
And it's amazing who God has brought us into contact with, the different people, and how he gradually broadened our horizons, where we became, gradually you develop your reputation as a caller, you get on the Saturday night circuit, you get on the convention circuit. We are, as we've said, known nationally. We can't go into any square dance club in this country without being known. But generally on the street, we're completely anonymous, which is lovely. We were breaking into Europe. We've called in Germany, in the Czech Republic, in the Netherlands. So we were starting to break into Europe, but that takes a lot of time in traveling. And so we went down the coaching route instead. We started to stay more in this country and coach other people in calling as well.
Just to come back to what we're talking about with Christians and what God has taught you. We regularly call, pre-COVID, called weekends. And the weekend would be a Friday night, Saturday, and a Sunday. Normally in a hotel with a nice big ballroom, something like that, or a big venue. And what we used to do on the Sunday morning, pre the sort of the farewell dance Sunday morning, we'd very often sing some gospel songs. We used to call it church.
It'd only be for 15 minutes before the dance.
For people who wanted to, and it's quite interesting that pretty much everybody would come.
Yeah.
And we'd sing perhaps 3, maybe 4 gospel songs or songs. And it got to the point towards the end where they said to us, when they checked in at the hotel on the Friday afternoon, not is what's the dancing program going to be, what's this, what's that. The first question is, will there be church on Sunday morning?
Incredible.
We found that quite interesting, that's what they would say.
It was interesting how many people had at some point been to church but had since drifted, and so they were able to connect with it. So you don't always know what God's doing behind the scenes, and the people he's put in our path that you try and speak to, try and support, and you don't always know who's watching you and what they are picking up from the way you speak to others, the way you behave, how you handle difficult situations. So it is very interesting sometimes. Hindsight is wonderful, to be able to look back and think, well, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be doing this, that, and the other. And sometimes you don't know what God's doing, but you have got to trust that he knows. He sees the whole picture, and he knows what is best for us and for the people around us. So it's being obedient and trusting him, even when you think, I don't know where this is going.
And I think that trust has definitely been one of the things that have really resonated with many of us in the last 2 years almost. You know, trusting that we will come out of this COVID situation, you know, despite the fact that we might have lost our loved ones and all of that. We have to trust God that he knows best, and he knows that loved ones are with him, and there is a reason behind all of that. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think a lot of people would actually see that and be encouraged, you know, to know that whatever you do, whatever work situation you're in, or whether it be a hobby or whatever it might have been, God has mapped something out for you.
Yes.
And just listening and following that path would not lead you to destruction, but actually to elevation.
Yes. It's not always easy, and there are plenty of highs and lows, but sometimes you learn as much in the lows, or sometimes more, than you would in the highs. And this is where God asks us to trust him, no matter whether it's good or bad, whether we're in situations or really difficult, uncomfortable. He's the same, he doesn't change, and he's there for us. So yes, it's a really important lesson that we often have to learn again and again and again.
And the song that comes to mind is the one that talks about the God in the mountains is the same God in the valley.
Yes.
The highs and the lows, it's the same God, and we just have to trust. So my final question to both of you, which is really not a question but kind of a reflection, if you like, is if anyone wanted to know more about square dancing, you know, I'm going to put the links to the videos you talked about earlier, Trudy, in the description of this podcast. But do you have an email address, a website, or any kind of information that you want to share with people if they wish to contact you or want to know more?
Yeah. Well, as we mentioned, we're head of one organisation in the country. The other organisation, which looks after the clubs, is the British Association of American Square Dance Clubs. That's a mouthful. But it has got a website, which is uksquaredancing.com. So it's all one word, uksquaredancing.com. So you can go on there and you'll be able to see what clubs there are in the area. You'll be able to see more information about square dancing. Alternatively, one of the clubs that we call for has a very good website that they're always posting information on as to what they've done, and it's one word, WagonersSquareDanceClub.com. That's another opportunity. Otherwise, people are very welcome to approach us, you know, either by email. We don't have our own website, but certainly we're happy for people to email us or to ring us if they just want to know more or just want to talk to us.
Wonderful. Could you give me the email address of the last one again, the website address of the last?
Yeah, it's Wagoners, that's WAGGONERS SQUARES, Square Dance Club. And all of that is one word. WagnersSquareDanceClub.com.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much for taking time out to talk to me. I've really enjoyed it. And I thought I knew something about square dance, but now I know more about square dancing, and I want to do more on it. I'm not planning to be an O-level student, by the way, Simon.
There's some very, very good dancers never get beyond key stage 1, so don't worry about that.
You're square dancing from the moment you join hand circle left.
Yeah.
You're square dancing.
Yeah.
So as long as you enjoy it, it doesn't matter what level you get to.
It's not about there's two sorts of dancers. Some dancers enjoy the complexity, the mental agility, they enjoy the A-level stuff. Others enjoy just having fun with a few friends.
Which is me.
Which is fine. And I tell you, neither group is right nor wrong, if you see what I mean. Those that want that extra mental A-level stimulation, great, brilliant, we can do that. But by the same token, those that just want to do the first program, great, no problem too. And they can have as much fun as those that are doing, the higher level stuff. And from our point of view, which we call to, I enjoy both.
Well, you have to as a caller.
Well,
and
you do.
And the president.
Have different skills.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Different skills. But yes, it's...
Those that go to the higher program stuff, they enjoy getting that 100% accuracy. Your good self have been to a hoedown. The fun you've had is by going wrong and, feeling a bit in front of your friends.
Or all your friends going wrong, but you getting it right and you laughing at your friends.
Indeed. Thank you, Simon and Trudy. Thank you. It's wonderful to have you both. And do take care.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Sandra.
much indeed, Simon.